We had a very special challenge for DataFam Europe where we were looking at the most popular attractions in London and the tube stations that are nearest to those. So we teamed up with Workout Wednesday for this challenge. So I hope that once you complete this challenge, you've also gone on to complete the Workout Wednesday dashboard as well. So I've just connected to the Microsoft Excel file that has these three tables within there. I'll start off with the London Tube Stations one. I always like to put in a clean step just to take a look at the data. I know that you can kind of see it in the input step itself, but for me, I find that the clean step helps me to see that a lot more clearly. So having a look at this, I can see that I've got the line here, and that gets repeated over here as the right line as well. That's actually not something that we're too interested in for this challenge, so we're just going to stick with the station just to tell us that kind of lower level of detail. We don't really need the path order or the branch either. That's kind of just telling you the order in which these train stations go along the line, so we're not going to use those. And then we've got a repetition as well of the name for the station. So we can get rid of a lot of these fields in the input step actually. So I'm going to change this view to a field list, and I'm just going to get rid of anything that is not the station, the right longitude or the right latitude. And speaking of those fields, let's rename those. So I'm going to add in my first clean step here, or second clean step if you like, called rename. And I'm going to use this rename fields button at the top here. Just to click on that, and I'm going to replace the right underscore and get rid of that and replace it with the word station and a space. So it's the station latitude and the station longitude. I really like this rename fields button. It's nice and quick to kind of rename multiple fields at once. So it then changes our view into this list view. I'm going to change it back to the profile pane just to be able to see that there. So we can see, for example, Earl's Court is being repeated a lot of different times. So let's go and fix that. So I'm going to deduplicate this. You see how I'm renaming my steps as I go. It's just kind of nice and simple to kind of make sure that we stay nice and documented and remember what we do in each step. So we're going to use the Identify Duplicate Rows this time button. So we click that and we can see that this nice long calculation gets written underneath, but all we want basically is to keep these unique rows. So I'm going to say keep only to those unique rows, and you can see now we've got a uniform distribution of our stations. We have 267 rows of data, we have 267 unique values for the stations, so that's all nice and tidied up. We've now got one row for each station. Brilliant. So I'm going to output that, and to do that as a single Excel file, I'm just going to leave the name as output for now, change that to Excel. I just need to give my worksheet a name, so I'll call it something like Tube Stations, and create a new worksheet for that. I know I've made a typo, but that doesn't matter too much now at the moment. Of course, if this were my real business critical output, then I would certainly rename it. But just for the purpose of showing you this quickly, I'm not going to today. Okay, so that's our first data set cleaned up. Now let's take a look at our attraction footfall. Already we can see something isn't quite going right here. We can see that our field names are all F1, F2, F3, F4, etc. Let's change this to set header instead of automatically setting the header itself. And that is meaning that, okay, great. Now it's picking up much better. We get the characteristic and then those different years as our field names, as we know we should. So that's one thing to watch out for with this one. Let's again just take a little look at the data as it's coming in. So we can see if we take a look at 2021 and 2022 fields, we've got these dashes in a couple of the rows. So these are the rows that have incomplete data that we want to filter out. So I'm going to add in a quick clean step to do that filtering, and I'm just going to click on this value for 2021 and I'm going to exclude it. And now you can see we've got 18 rows remaining and the rest of our data is complete. But for these fields, the 2021 and 2022, they are actually now string fields because they had those little dashes, those little hyphens in them. Let's take a look at the recommendation from Tableau Prep. Okay, it's saying either this should be a postcode or we should pivot the data. Tableau Prep's getting ahead of itself. Let's first of all change the data type. I thought that might be one of its suggestions. We'll change it to a whole number instead, so that now it looks the same as the other year fields. But now we're going to go ahead and pivot it so that we have a row for each of those different years. So I'm just going to add in a pivot there. I'm going to use a wildcard search to pivot, just so that I can avoid having to drag over all of these individually, and it means that when new fields get added to the data, it will automatically update. So I'm going to just search for the number 20, and then all of those years get brought down into a single field. I'm going to do some renaming so that this is now my year field, change it to a numeric value, and I'm going to leave pivot 1 names as it is for now, because we need to multiply this by 1,000, our footfall data, as it said in the challenge. So I'll create a calculated field, I'll call it attraction footfall, and I will just take that pivot 1 values field and multiply it by 1,000. Lovely, and then I can get rid of that original pivot 1 values field. Awesome. So now it's probably the trickiest part of the challenge, where I now want to create the average footfall for those 5 years, but I don't want to get rid of the detail of each individual year. So that's where we're going to use a fixed level of detail calculation. So I'm going to come to the attraction footfall, I'm going to go to create calculated field and fixed LOD. I'm going to group by each characteristic. Ooh, I probably need to rename this field to attraction, don't I? Let's remember to do that. And I'm going to change this compute using to be an average of the attraction footfall. And I will just call this the 5-year average footfall. Okay, and before I forget, I'm going to just rename this characteristic to attraction. Lovely. And our last thing that we're going to do with this data set is we're going to calculate the rank. So taking that average that we've just calculated, so we can see how that average is repeating across every row for a British museum, and then it's changing for the Natural History Museum. But we're going to rank these. So I'm going to go to the menu again, go down to create calculated fields and do a rank this time. And you can see how that's working nicely. British Museum is a rank of 1, but then when it comes to our second rank, it's going to number 6 instead. So to stop this happening, we can change our rank type to be a dense rank instead, so that it doesn't take into consideration any of those tied values. So now our second place, our Natural History Museum, is just getting a number 2 as its rank instead of a number 6. So I'll rename that as rank. And then again, I will just add in my output step so that I have my second sheet of my output. So I'll change this again to be an Excel file. I'm going to just have it be my output, and this worksheet is going to be called my footfall, something like that. So I'll create a new worksheet. There we go. And then, I just realized it changed it from being output to output 2 again. I want these to be the same Excel sheet, so it's important that they have the same name. So then final data set to clean up and make sure it's nice and clean before we go into Tableau Desktop is our location, latitude and longitude. So we can see that we've got our attraction names and the latitude and longitude in 2 separate fields here, but the latitude and longitude are in the same field. So let's just split those up, shall we? So I'm just going to call this step split, and I am going to go to my more options, split values. I'm going to try an automatic split, see if Tableau Prep's smart enough. Tableau Prep is absolutely smart enough to see that there's a common separator of the comma in each of the rows, and so split out our latitude and longitude there for us. So I just want to make sure to rename this to something like attraction latitude and attraction longitude. And then just make sure these are numeric again, so they're not just strings being read in, since they are decimal numbers is what I need to make sure that I change them to, otherwise they all round to 51 if they're whole numbers, so that's not the best there, is it? So there we go. Now we're just going to output that as well to that same sheet, so do an Excel file, change this to just output. This will be our location for our attractions, and there we go. Now when we run this workflow, it will be able to run all of those 3 tables in our Excel file and create that for us. So hopefully you enjoyed the challenge, hopefully you enjoyed the Workout Wednesday as well, and thank you very much for watching.